Welcome to the Great White Brotherhood YouTube channel.
Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be reading chapter 7 from the book, The Path of Mankind. I may be speaking a little bit quickly today in this video because I'm hoping to get through this one chapter. I'm hoping to get through this chapter in one take. So here we go, let's dig in. Chapter 7, Into the Known. The pendulum swing that we have previously mentioned, moving from spiritual darkness into the glory of spiritual light, has, of course, been going on for eons of time, both emptying and recharging God's batteries, if we may use that analogy, implying that even God does not have unlimited energy and that, at a certain point in the emptying of God's battery, it runs out of power and thus has to be recharged again, thanks to the negativity created by moving into spiritual darkness. It is hoped that the student can appreciate by now that we are just using mental images when we talk about God having batteries, but the concept of electricity, using and replacing it, is close enough to reality to serve our purpose. There is no point in using complex imagery nor employing complex terms to describe God in action when there are simple examples with which all are familiar to describe reality at work. So, as we have said, God's batteries are now fully charged, and this energy, being alive and being life itself, is acting like a fetus of a person or an animal, awaiting the wonderful moment when it can extricate itself from its mother's womb and appear in the light of day. Once again, this is an analogy, and not a very good one. But how can one describe the power of God making itself manifest, especially as this light, although invisible to most people, being pure spirituality, nevertheless is the basis of all life? Therefore, we have this ineluctable progression from darkness to light, from fear of the unknown into positivity, love, and self-assuredness. Now, we mentioned in the title of this chapter that life is moving from the unknown into the known, and yet, for most of us, both incarnate and discarnate, all any of us have known is the negative period that has occupied all our minds for virtually as long as we can remember. As we who are discarnate, even the more recent arrivals, communicate with discarnate beings that have been in the spiritual realm for a long time, their memories are filled with times, with long centuries of war and bloodshed. There were very few moments of light during those dark ages, and they were, indeed, dark and dismal times. However, man is not limited to just that period of time. The lifespan of a human is virtually infinite, going in both directions from the present. This implies that all life existed long before any concept of incarnation in physical form was conceived. In the case of humans, the logos of what we term a human existed in the high astral realms, long before it was called forth to assume its role as a recognizable form of human. We wish to discuss just what this logos, this embryo human, was and where it was located in the spiritual planes. We have previously mentioned that all is one, and that one is God. We have also mentioned that this oneness can assume an almost infinite variety of forms: animal, vegetable, and mineral. We mentioned the id and said that it was the basic logos of humanity, the archetypal concept of a human. So, can we discover a bit more about this concept, why it exists, and where it exists? Thanks to the contribution made to this book by extremely advanced beings, themselves so advanced spiritually compared to most of us that they are barely visible to us, being just entities of pure spiritual light, the light of God. We have been able to piece together information concerning the actions taken by God in his quest for knowledge and wisdom. We wish to underline our eternal thanks to these beings who descended to our level in order to answer our questions and to share their knowledge with us, without which much of this book would not have been written. We are happy to share this knowledge with you and hope that you, too, can appreciate with gratitude the guidance obtained. And yes, we are all grateful. So, it appears that the God Force on the eighth plane was able to create astral forms to explore that plane and experience the life that God created. As was mentioned, this was a long time ago, indeed. So we can say, ignoring any and all other forms of life created at that time and concentrating exclusively on humanity, that man has, to all intents and purpose, always existed, although, as has already been mentioned, the human forms that inhabited and explored the eighth plane, or carrier wave, bore little resemblance to man as he appears today. He was purely an astral entity, which implies that he was of light. This light form still exists associated with humanity, and when we can shake off the illusional form created by ego, man will once again assume his body of light. Thus, we can state that this astral form, astral both in its connotation of dimensions and in its starlight meaning, is the basic logos, excuse me, is the basic logos of man, and this man, when he is ready to be able to return to his known form that has always been associated with him. Let us move down from the eighth plane, which we have already described in some detail in an earlier chapter, to an area where events that are more easily comprehensible occur. Now, to repeat what we have already said, man, in his primal form, is pure light, without form, although we will say that the logos of humanity is spherical, a ball of light. This light contains all the elements that go to make a man, with the exception of ego. Thus, we find higher self, determination, will, imagination, and emotion among other attributes, with the exception of ego, which does not appear until much later in the life of a person. This light form is the concept that humanity will eventually reassume when ego diminishes enough to allow the light of God to shine forth from him. This is the point that we need to break off from describing the basic logos of man to elucidate how we create our human shape that we all have or have had at some point in our existence. It must at all times be remembered that we are one with God, and thus we are one logos, or id. But it is that id that enables us to assume a unique identity. This is where we have to bring into the picture something that is called the oversoul. Oversoul is that which acts like a parent to us. When we start to assume a more recognizable form than just pure light, we are put in the care of something that is termed the oversoul. Actually, the oversoul is a construct that has been created by angelic forces to act rather like parents do, guiding us and nurturing our existence in whatever plane of reality we move to. The oversoul is not a person as we would know, a parent, but it exists and acts as a sort of home base for us, our home while we need one. Once again, the oversoul is non physical and does not really exist except as a concept, a place that we can call home. Thus, it is very precious, and all humans accept that they belong to an oversoul. It gives a feeling of security to know that we have a home, a place in which we are cared for and loved, rather as a child, providing that he lives in a good home, returns to with pleasure at the end of each day away from home. It is from the oversoul that we get the concept on earth of forming families. Now, the oversoul does not create life. All life was created by God long ago and waits in the highest realms as an astral form, pure light, until it is time for it to enter the stage of active life. It is at this point that the embryo life form, life spirit, is put into the care of an oversoul. We break off at this point to indicate that oversouls act in a sort of pyramidal concept, like a hierarchy. At the lowest point, they are numerous, but oversouls exist in higher forms, stacked on top of each other in decreasing numbers until finally there is only one, and that one is God. Anyway, we return to our embryo human spirit, which is put by angels into the care of an oversoul at the lowest level, but which is, nevertheless, from a spiritual point of view, far in advance than anything that we could imagine. At this point, the embryo spirit could be considered very much to be like a newborn babe, totally dependent on the oversoul to care for it. Therefore, it is nurtured over a long period of time by both angelic beings and others who dedicate their existence to the correct upbringing of embryo humanity. Just as earthly parents nurture their children, so these beings, some of whom are advanced humans, and some angelic beings who are of a different life plan, look after these young human spirits. The object is to bring into the awareness of these young spirits the various concepts that will enable them to realize that what it means to be a human. Because although the embryo spirits have the human logos associated with them, as opposed to animal or any other life form, the spirit itself, the spirit itself, at the beginning of its long journey through human existence, has no concept of what being a human entails. Thus, a long period of patient education ensues, gradually bringing into this young spirit's awareness that it is a human and what all that entails. In this way, the spirit, which is still very much connected to its home base, the oversoul, gradually develops mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as much information as it feels capable of absorbing. It should be pointed out that, just as all people are different, so all spirits are different, and some advance more easily in any one direction than others. As there are almost an infinite number of things to learn and an almost infinite number of directions a spirit can be drawn towards, it takes very clever and devoted educators to help the spirit control his chosen direction. Then, as was described in the previous volume in the series, The Stairway to Freedom, the spirit that wishes to have a physical incarnation gradually works his way towards Earth, eventually to be born in his chosen sex and family, to start his long journey back again to the point he started. The difference, of course, the whole purpose of the voyage, being to grow in wisdom through an almost infinite number of experiences, and all that knowledge and wisdom is fed via a series of oversouls back into the Godhead, and God, too, grows in wisdom. It should be realized that during these various incarnations, first on earth and then on other planes of spirituality, known as dimensions, the Oversoul is always monitoring the progress of his charge, the human spirit. It does not, generally speaking, interfere with the progress of that spirit, but it can, should it feel that things are going seriously astray. However, like most good parents, it allows its young charge to experience for itself, to try its strength, and to grow through the experience that it draws towards itself. We break off in our discussion of the Oversoul to return to the word incarnations that we mentioned. We have already explained that, for the vast majority of humanity, they have just one incarnation in physicality on planet Earth. For a long time, the concepts of multiple incarnations in human form has been put into the minds of generations. This concept is, of course, once again, an archon one. The archons, being almost AI, intelligence, in nature, have great difficulty inventing original thought, and so they usually take an existing fact, turn it on its head, and present it as a negative concept in order to create fear. Incarnations is just one more such way the archons work. Certainly, there are a number of incarnations, if one can describe the progress through life of a person, but we repeat, generally speaking, almost without exception, a human, or animal for that matter, has just one incarnation in physicality. All other incarnations occur in the astral realms of spiritual progression and are not so much incarnations as progressions from one plane of spirituality to another. We hope that as we progress further into the light shining on us from the source of all life, God, so this false concept will come to be seen for what it is, an archon invention. We further realize that it will take a lot of mental effort by some people who have not only the concept of multiple incarnations firmly ingrained in their minds, but have built a whole story, a whole concept how life is constructed around this false concept. There are some people who write books and give lectures expounding this incorrect idea, and we are sorry to say that their egos will take a blow when they will have to admit that the concept of reincarnation and much other related information that they have been expounding to a gullible public was false. One can easily imagine that, even when they realize the truth, having to face the public and admit their error would be devastating to their status as gurus. Sorry, let me say that again so it flows a little better. One can easily imagine that, even when they realize the truth, having to face the public and admit their error would be devastating to their status as gurus of spiritual wisdom, and so we expect that many will cling to and expound this false idea for a long while into the future, hoping that the public who follow their teachings will never find the truth for themselves. Of course, the truth will one day will out of course, the truth will out one day and the inevitable blow to egos will occur. However, truth is better than fiction, and those who have embraced lies should have taken the trouble to seek the truth before putting pen to paper and just follow convent sorry, let me read this again. However, truth is better than fiction, and those who have embraced lies should have taken the trouble to seek the truth before putting pen to paper and just following conventional wisdom instead of doing original research on the subject. To return to the Oversoul. As was mentioned, the Oversoul, which we explain again, is not a person, but a concept, a consciousness, nevertheless has intelligence. All is one. Therefore, all the attributes that humans have, oversouls also have. Thus, we can compare an oversoul to a loving parent, always keeping a parental eye on its offspring. It must be said that most people incarnate have never heard about oversouls, and thus have no idea that there is always a strong bond between themselves and their oversoul. This is unfortunate and will change. Once again, it is to the archons that we must attribute this secrecy concerning one's oversoul. In order to hide the spiritual aspect of humanity from people, naturally, it was in their interest to keep knowledge about this parental guidance from the public. This will obviously change as we move into the bright future, and people will learn to contact their oversoul for guidance. The oversoul is not higher self. As was mentioned, it is a concept, rather as we have the concept of home, a safe haven to return to when it is necessary. Thus, the oversoul is a very important element in the makeup of humanity. It is the oversoul's duty, in conjunction with various angelic beings, to prepare the student, to prepare the student, human, sorry. It is the oversoul's duty, in conjunction with the various angelic beings, to prepare the human student for his long voyage into the unknown we call life. Now, we should say that not all young humans have earthly incarnations. The baby human, as soon as he is ready to make decisions concerning his future, feels drawn by the law of mutual attraction towards a certain area of life. This may be an earthly incarnation, or it may be to stay in the higher astral spheres and advance in that way. Or again, it may go off to one of the astral areas surrounding a planet somewhere and become what Earth people call an alien. We should say that some young humans are drawn towards the dark side of life and will descend to the lower regions, not necessarily in an evil sense as imagined by man, but in order to work with the negative spirits, whose job it is to help keep the planet Earth in balance from a point of view of growth and decline. It is imagined by many that if there were only positive growth, life would be paradisical, but in fact, it would be chaos. We need balance between growth and decline for order to be maintained, and so these brave souls volunteer to descend to those dark areas to assist the angels of destruction in their duties. This, as one can imagine, is a very unpleasant but necessary task, and it takes a very special, courageous person to spend long ages working in abysmal conditions to aid and control the actual negative angels tasked with destruction. Equally, other humans might be drawn to assist the angels of growth, if we may call them this, which is a hard but more pleasant job. So, the student of esoteric matters can see that there are a large number of areas that young human might be drawn to, only one of which involves an earthly incarnation. Excuse me. But our excuse me. But our field of concentration at the moment centers on those that decide to descend to earth. We described, both in this book and more extensively in the first volume, again, the Stairway to Freedom book, that not all young humans have exactly the same views on God, spirituality, and the makeup of life. Just as people on earth find mathematics or foreign languages easy or difficult to assimilate, so young spirits in the care of an oversoul find themselves more or less attracted to the spiritual concepts. Once the Oversoul, in conjunction with angelic help, locate a person who cannot accept the education given to him concerning God, etc., no one tries to force him, but he will be offered the opportunity of going to earth, which is the plane of existence where the people of earth have either a twisted view of spirituality or reject the notion of God altogether. This, as we know, is the result of Archon intervention, a sad but necessary event in the pendulum swing of life. And so, for long ages, a certain section of young humanity was attracted to Earth. We break off once again to say that the aforementioned pendulum swing has been, for some time, moving into the light areas, and that light has been shining in the higher astral planes for quite a long time, illuminating every aspect of the higher planes, and thus, as a consequence, it has become normal for more and more young spirits to become spiritually awake. This has resulted in a lesser number of young humans coming to Earth in total denial of God, and more volunteering to come to Earth to assist with the awakening process for those already incarnate who have, themselves, their spiritual awareness firmly in place. Now, this change in optic has only just started. As we progress more and more into the light, so we will have a decrease in the numbers of young people who leave their oversoul in denial of God, and more who will choose to incarnate on earth, fully equipped to help push all humanity incarnate forward more quickly. It has to be said that the evil ones, under the control of the Archons, are also fully aware of this change and are doing all they can to limit the effectiveness of these young souls using injections and drugs of various kinds to dampen the fragile physical bodies of these brave young souls. The body may be damaged and communication between the spiritual aspects and the physical aspects impaired, but the evil ones cannot damage the spiritual aspects. Unfortunately, the only way these young humans have of transmitting their wisdom is through telepathy. As very few people incarnate have bothered to learn telepathy, these wise beings are trapped within their damaged bodies and are unable to fulfill the function that they incarnated to do. It is hoped that soon a solution to this problem will be found and the world will be flooded with spiritual wisdom. But first, the power of the evil ones will need to be diminished, which brings us back again to the spiritual change that will assist in the removal from influence of evil people still firmly in place in so many domains. Let us now assume that a young human, whatever his level of spiritual awareness, has now left the safety of his oversoul and has taken the plunge towards earth. We have already described the different descending planes of existence that the person in astral form descends to in a previous tome, again, the Stairway to Freedom book. So we will not repeat it here, except to say that the person gradually descends to the point where he can be born on earth into his chosen family and future. The student of the mysteries of life will need first to read and comprehend the information contained in the first volume of the Stairway to Freedom, or much of what we talk about will not be understood. So, we will assume that a baby is born and gradually grows to become a young adult. We will stop this chapter here, which dealt mainly with the birth in the spiritual realms of an embryo spirit and its growth in the care of its oversoul. to the point that it was ready to take its next step into life. In the next chapter, we will attempt to describe what an incarnation is and its purpose so that the student can better comprehend the way his life is unfolding. Okay, so thank you very much for watching and listening to this chapter, chapter 7. I apologize for reading through it a bit quickly and stumbling here and there, but I did want to make sure that I would get this recorded in one take. And if you have any questions or comments or feedback, please leave them in the comment section under this video, and I will read those comments and respond to them. And thank you very much again, and I'll see you on the next video.
Thank you for watching this video. Please visit our website at thegreatwhitebrotherhood.org for free books and lessons to help you on your spiritual journey.